You are the person behind the allocations.
We also allocate the real money.
I guess that's a huge responsibility.
Yes, in fact, it's stressful.
Somebody has to do it. Which is better, following the trend or against the trend?
You can have successful studies in both.
Javier Colón, the CTO of Darwinex, the person behind the allocations.
At Darwinex, the profits you can make, it's unlimited. So it's an environment that pushes you to grow fast.
You want to be
but without losing money. Your sites.
Without losing your own money. What is the drawdown threshold where the traders should say, okay, I better restart the account rather trying to recover it?
Before you get a winning strategy, people lose 5,000 euros minimum. When you start trading, the first thing you need to know is if your strategy works or not. Imagine you are an investor. And I'm a trader. What percentage would you pay me?
Not 80%.
One of the things that we clearly like to see.
Javier Colón, thank you very much for accepting the quick offer to have a podcast with you today. And you are the person behind the allocations in Darwinex.
And also in charge of product.
The charge of product. So you can tell us more about which strategies work, which EAs the traders should pick. So let's start from what type of strategies works best for Darwinex Zero.
Okay. So first of all, you know that Darwinex Zero, what we do, you already explained that. One of my task is to allocate our own capital and also investor capital into what we call an investable index.
Okay.
So apart from all these Darwinian allocations that people know how they work, we also allocate real money from investors. And my role is to define in which strategies we should allocate that money, okay?
I guess that's a huge responsibility.
Yes, in fact, it's stressful.
Somebody has to do it.
Exactly, and we've been working already 10 years so far, and we more or less are really comfortable of how our allocation methodology works.
Okay.
So that enables us to be not that stressed.
For the beginners that are watching or listening our podcast today, what type of strategies one should start with? Is it trend following, scalping strategy?
There are several ways of categorizing strategies, but the way we do it is to have the less parameters so that it's not too complex for us to define the allocation. So we define the less parameters, but they need to work, okay?
And by less parameters, do you mean trading only one symbol, for example?
If they trade usually against the trend, or if they usually trade following the trend. This is the first thing we analyze, okay?
Which is better? Following the trend or against the trend?
You need to look at other factors to determine if they're good or not. So you can have successful studies in both directions. Okay. Then another thing we measure, I don't know if people are familiar with Darwinex Zero interface, but there is like a statistic that is called max positive versus negative excursion.
Okay.
Which we measure the ability of the trader to allow winner trades to get them that they live longer than when the trade goes against them. Okay, so it means it's the asymmetry of your ability to be able to let winners run and close losers fast. Okay, this asymmetry, the more you are able to let winners run, okay, against and compare it to your losers. This is clearly a good, I would say, parameter. If you have this type
of sign of a strategy.
Clearly, the best sign of a winning strategy if you let winners run and not you cut the losses really fast.
Okay, so does that mean that smaller stop loss and bigger take profit?
Yes, exactly. If I divided the average winning trade against the average losing trade, the higher this number, the better. Okay. And it's not easy. Okay.
Yeah, I guess so.
Clearly, one of the things that we clearly like to see if there is some sort of discipline putting some stop loss. Okay.
We can say stop loss is a must. It's needed.
Exactly. It doesn't mean that you need to put a stop loss in the MetaTrader. It's just that whenever the trade goes against you, you close it fast. Okay.
Okay.
So this is more or less. It doesn't mind that we don't see that there is a stop loss put.
Okay. So it's not a must to have a stop loss, but to exit the bad trades.
Exactly.
So that's probably answers a little bit my next question, where I was gonna ask you about what types of expert advisors you suggest, robots. I guess that puts grid systems out of the question, because the grid systems usually stay long term.
Exactly. Whenever we see the grid, the characteristic of the grids is that they don't cut losses.
Yeah.
So you immediately see in this parameter that I mentioned before, you immediately see if there's a grid.
Yeah.
We can somehow allocate money also in grids. They are not bad whenever the volatility is low. So
yes.
Darwin universe in which we allocate, they need to work at any sort of environment.
No matter if Trump is speaking or not.
Exactly. So, for example, the last 2 years, they were low volatility years in FX mostly, and grids work really well. The most important thing is that we might invest in grids, but we know that we are investing in grids.
Okay.
So we have a lower percentage invested on those type of strategies.
Okay.
And we only invest in those type of strategies if we see that they have lived a long time, so if the track record is really long.
Yeah, I actually had an account with one grid system, and it lasts for 1.5 years, and I received allocation, but it's a grid, and one moment it opened just big losses, and it went like 50 or 60%.
The good thing of Darwinia is that from Darwinia you might receive allocations, but the big money is in this investor capital that I manage.
And I see with the grid systems, because sooner or later they will blow the account.
The other thing is that we look at is in which assets they trade.
Okay. Which are the recommended assets?
One thing I can tell to people is that usually people who have traders who trade commodities or indices, they usually do better.
Better than Forex?
Usually, yes. It doesn't, but it does not mean necessarily that you cannot make profit in FX. Yeah. If you look at people in which we allocate capital, or people who are doing well, you can see a higher percentage of people trading indices or gold. Okay.
That's interesting. And I mentioned that this grid system of mine made a huge loss at one moment, a huge drawdown, and I obviously had to restart the account because it was nearly a blown account. What is the drawdown threshold where the traders should say, okay, I better restart the account rather trying to recover it? Is there a percentage where one should restart the account or try to recover it?
I would not recommend to restart the account unless you're going to change something in your strategy, okay? So as a trader, you need to know that it's really difficult to find a really profitable strategy that profits over and over time. That is really
very difficult, I know. Yeah.
So we need to be humble and say, okay, I'm talking more for beginners, okay? So the first thing they should do is to try to find out that strategy and feel comfortable and with the strategy and so that he has no emotions, so that he's so comfortable that whenever he has a drawdown, he feels really well. He doesn't mind that he's having a drawdown, okay? But once you define a strategy, you need to fit to it, okay? Be really disciplined. And if you trade a strategy and the conversion of the strategy into the Darwin, once you have the Darwin, the good thing of the Darwin is that calibrates that all strategies have the same risk. Okay, with Darwin, you know the risk. The risk is around the risk of the S&P 500, more or less. Yeah. So that enables you to know when there is a drawdown that is higher than a certain limit. What it can tell you is that probably your strategy is not working. It means that if you trade this with a real disciplined way, okay, you create a Darwin. Whenever the Darwin has a drawdown beyond 15%, 1.5.
Okay, so that's the number.
It's an indication that probably your strategy is not going to work. So it means that you should probably analyze what you are doing and change your strategy some way, so that, because this is a clear indicator that probably your strategy is not good.
Okay, so that 15% are in the Darwin. It could be more on MetaTrader.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
this is normalized by the risk of this S&P.
Okay, that's important. That's important.
But this is really important because when you start trading, the first thing you need to know is if your strategy works or not.
Right.
And if you do this in your MetaTrader, you can get confused. If you look at the Darwin, you would have a better idea if you're good or not.
Yeah, I had such an account where I was testing new gold expert advisors, and in MetaTrader it made 50% in the first 1 month. And I looked at the Dow and there was no allocation, was no great result. I was like, but then I realized after the second or third that initially was just taking too much risk, then it was going down and so on. So that's very important that the people should look in the Darwin percentage, no matter of a drawdown and a profit. So in this matter, can you tell us some numbers of the chances of people reaching the targets for the permanent allocation? Like if I were to buy, let's say 5% or 15%, on average, how many people or for how long the traders achieve this target? And just to make it clear, it's 5% on the Darwin.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So people must know that the higher the target, the cheaper it is. Okay. That's
logical. Yeah.
That's logical.
Yeah.
But people they don't know how difficult it is to get that target.
Yeah.
I will give you some numbers, but you must know that there is a chance of getting at that number or that target, but also how much time I need to get to that
that's
target.
actually interesting for me. Like on average,
Exactly.
how
So
long
you must also have in mind the time it consumes you. So it takes you to get to there, no?
Yeah.
So, for example, I will give you data for 1 year. What are the chances of getting the target in 1 year from now? For example, for the 5% target is 53%. So 53%. This is on average.
Okay, so 53% from the people reach the target.
Exactly. So in 1 year.
In 1 year, okay.
The 10% target, 28% will reach that target in 1 year.
Okay.
But this is on average.
Yes. If you don't mind, we will put these figures during the podcast so people can see them.
I want to demonstrate how transparent we are. Okay, with this.
Yeah, that's really nice. By the way,
the 15% target in 1 year, it's 14.14%.
Okay.
People reach that level, and 20% target in 1 year, it's 6% only.
Okay, only 6% reach
in 1 year.
In 1 year.
Okay.
Target. And what is, if you can share, because I see you're very transparent, which is great, and I appreciate it. What is the most common plan that people purchase when it comes to permanent allocation? Is it instant? Is it 5%, 15%? What's the most common?
Right now, the most common is the 5%.
The 5%.
So my recommendation here is that the more confident you are in your strategy, I think it's cheaper for you to get targets that are more, for example, 10% or 15%, because your chances to getting to there are higher than the average, because the numbers I give to you are average.
I think in my eyes, at the beginning, the very appealing was the 3-year plan where you get 15%. But as you said, it depends on the strategy, how confident you are, because if it's a new strategy, you're not very sure. I did this for 2 accounts with EAs that I wasn't really sure how they will perform. And then I see just it takes too long to reach the 15%, right?
Let's go to the opposite. You don't know anything about trading.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Imagine the opposite, okay? The chances of winning are higher if you buy the instant allocation, because you already get the allocation, so you have 50% of making profit.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, but it's far it's more expensive. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not willing to incentivize people who are starting to buy any allocation at all. At the beginning, try to figure out a winning strategy, and it takes time. For example, in my case, it took me 5 years before I was profitable.
Yeah.
Maybe it took less. Maybe it took 3. But it was at the 5th year when I was confident that I had a winning strategy.
Yeah.
This is the moment in which you can start making money. Right. Because if you have a winning strategy but you are not confident on it, what will happen is that whenever you get a drawdown, you will get nervous and you will start probably not following your discipline.
Yeah.
So you can, even having a good strategy, if you're not confident on it, you can lose money.
Right.
So it's something that takes time. And the good thing of Darwinex Zero is that it enables you to make this journey without paying too much. Because 38 euros, you get the chances of getting investor capital if you do well, but you pay only 30 euros.
That's the most you can lose.
Other services that you can have for someone who is starting, for example, so opening a brokerage account. We own a brokerage and we have statistics from people starting, big beginners, and they usually lose between, well, you can have different numbers, but I can assure you that before you get a winning strategy, people lose 5,000 euros minimum.
Yeah.
So here you pay 38 euros, you have chances of getting some allocations, you test your strategy against others. You also can learn. You can learn from. You can check statistics from winning strategies. It's an environment in which it's pushing you to grow. Okay. The good thing is that when you trade and others can see what you're doing, I think you put more effort on doing well.
Yeah, especially when you have the listing,
exactly.
And the competition.
Exactly. So it's an environment that pushes you to grow fast.
You want to be,
but without losing money.
Without losing your own money.
I see this 30 euros like a gym.
It's the fee you pay to participate.
It's an investment you do before you are profitable. Yeah. And once you get profitable, these 30 euros are peanuts compared to the money you can make.
Yeah. So the 15% profit split, I'm not going to ask you why this. I explained already in many of my videos why this. I know that you can't increase it. And the thing that even you increase it, even it's 20 or 25, 30%, it's still not going to be too attractive because prop firms on the other side, they offer 80 or 90%, unrealistic, right? And it's the same thing with my channel because viewers and subscribers are very happy when they see YouTuber buying mansions and sport cars and hey, I want to be like this guy. And when Petko shows 2 to 3% a month realistic trading, they're like, okay, I'll like maybe next time the video. So it's the same thing with Darwinex. It shows realistic trading. And I really like the fact that the 15% represent exactly the...
But yes, so, imagine you are an investor, and I'm a trader, and you want me to manage your capital. What percentage would you pay me?
Not 80%.
Because if I pay you 80, you will always lose. Because when I make money, I pay you 80, but when I lose money, I don't pay you anything.
Right.
So at the end, you end up paying me and without having any performance. So it's impossible. No one in the world will pay you this if it's managing your own capital.
I thank you very much for answering all the questions. And at the end of every podcast of ours, we have kind of a tradition where I will ask you just a few questions and I will ask you to answer with one word. For example, because you have a trading experience yourself, algo or manual trading?
I'm a manual trader.
Manual trader.
But I use quantitative analysis in order to execute my trades.
Forex or gold?
In my case, I would prefer to trade FX.
Okay. Darwinex Zero or Darwinex.com?
If you are profitable and you have money, I think I would go to Darwinex. If I'm starting or I don't have my own capital, I will go for Darwinex Zero.
Thank you again for answering all my questions, and I hope this is not going to be the last podcast we do.
It's been a pleasure. I'm more than grateful for having this interview, and you can come with me whenever you want to have more insights about Darwinex Zero.
Okay, thank you very much.